Hey guys, it's Evan with Underhill Bonsai, and welcome back. I know we just did a video recently, but I wanted to revisit something that I promised that I would keep revisiting, but it's been 3 years since I've released the original content about bald cypress design. So me and Justin here, Dardenne, not Dardenne or Sardine, Dardenne, we're gonna go in and we're going to further the design of this bald cypress here. So the intention with the original series, it was called Bald Cypress, Flat Top Bald Cypress Part 1, Part 2. It was a lot of convoluted stuff. I'm just going to call it the Flat Top series for now on, because some of those trees that I worked on are either not here anymore or they just don't look like they used to 3 years ago. So this is one of the 3 trees that I worked on. And so this was kind of the bigger, broader trunk tree. So this tree was collected by Nate Murray. Nate is one of our regulars when it comes to Yamadori collection. He's also calls himself the Boot Bonsai. So if you go over to Instagram, check him out, you'll see he's been collecting bald cypresses for quite some time. And so this was one of the earlier trees that we got from him. And so I've already done the carving, which the link to that video should be here. I've never done that before. It feels awkward to say that. But but the link to that video should be on screen where I did the carving originally. And then there's a follow-up video where I did some of the wiring on these main branches that will be later on, will show up right after that video. So I think, like I said, I think the first one was 3 years ago. I think the follow-up was about 1.5 years ago. So I'm actually not doing too bad as far as pacing goes. But as far as content goes, we should keep on a steady pace now. So me and Justin will go through and partially defoliate this tree, address the height here. It's probably not showing up on camera, but this thing's touching the ceiling. But this is typical of a tree that hasn't been worked on in over 1 year or 2. I can't remember the last time I trimmed this tree. It may have been knocked back to just slow it down and discourage it from getting too large. So once we get to the main trunk line here, we can reestablish that top that we were looking for. Before I get too far with that though, I do want to go back and address a few comments that were made on the previous videos that I'm just bad at going back and answering comments on stuff like that, because we have our Facebook page, we have our Instagram page, we have the podcast show, I have emails that come in. So I just wanted to hit a few of the questions I thought were good to go back on the earlier videos that you guys were asking about this tree and other bald cypress related questions real quick. Nathan Majel 487, have you had much success with air layering bald cypress at the trunk? I have a 3-year-old cypress I would like to cut and begin developing into a medium-sized bonsai. Its trunk base is currently a thumb thick. I'd like to get 2 trees out of the procedure if possible. I don't air layer bald cypresses. To me, in my range in Louisiana, it kind of seems pointless.
Yeah, right. They grow so quick around here.
They grow so fast, and if you want to, depending on what your range is, you don't have your range or where you are located at. So I can't speak to that, but here in Louisiana, I would just go get another one, especially if it was thumb size. We're talking about a tree like this big. So air layering though, people air layer maples and elms and ficuses and all kinds of stuff here. I think you can do it. It's a deciduous tree and it's pretty prolific in like producing roots. So I don't see why you couldn't, but I just don't. Right. Yeah. Leslin's Dale 11, question 1, why cut the wound convex instead of concave? So this is something that I explained in great detail in some of the earlier videos. So if I cut it concave, then this shape right here would not hold up. It would start to collapse, and then this taper that I was trying to create with the carve originally would not be as pretty. It would actually be sunken in right here, and then that would defeat the taper.
Right.
So I leave it convex because this wound, and this tree really hasn't progressed because it really hasn't been repotted and then allowed to grow again, but it really hasn't progressed a whole lot on that wound. But the cambium here is about 1.5 inches or so, and it will eventually creep its way over this convex wound. We need to clean it up. That's one of the things we need to do here, is brush it with a brush and then see if it's punky to encourage it to continue to roll. So yeah, it defeats the taper if you make it concave. Question 2, why spend 45 minutes carving with a Dremel when you can use a more aggressive wood carving tool like a King Author series or a die grinder? That's funny you say that because back when I was originally doing these carvings, I just didn't have those tools in the proper setup and honestly a die grinder. So this is what I was using before to carve out. And I like this too because this is more of a finishing tool, but this is what I'm using now. So this is the die grinder fitted with a King Author style. It's like a larger chainsaw. But yeah, this will take out the wood, but this is terrifying. So I will only really use this tool like if I'm trying to get a lot of stuff done, but people will get, they will get gutted by this. Like, be very careful. I know that when I do these videos, people will get encouraged to do certain things. Please do not take away from this video that you're going to go out and get these tools and then hurt yourself. Be very cautious, lots of practice, lots of patience. That's why I use this, because I didn't want to get hurt on video. That's probably why. But yeah, I mean, it did take me a while carving it. And yes, that tool, the die grinder will give me that rounder shape faster. But sometimes you can cut too much wood and then it's impossible to go back on that.
No going back, right?
Yeah, once you take the wood off, you can't put it back on. So let's see, is there, I'm gonna answer like one more question and we're gonna get to work. So Brett Gleasoner 3065, I've just purchased three 9-year-old nursery stock coastal cypress pinned straight. I want to twist one of them to make a cascade, cut the top off of one of them, and then let the other one thicken to grow huge before I cut it like you did in the video. Can you offer any advice? Thanks, bud. Yeah, thanks, bud, for giving me like a pretty umbrella like explanation of how to develop cypresses. Yeah, but the pin straight, so I'm guessing you just I'm assuming that these are also like thumb size or a little bit bigger. So coastal cypress, I hope you're referring to bald cypress taxodium ascendens or taxodium distichum, which is what I'm working with here. Masazuni cypress is way different in treatment, but you can do that with those. That also is a coastal cypress as well. They're in the same family. But yeah, as far as twisting, I want to make a twist and make a cascade. Hot take, bald cypresses don't cascade. They do drape over swamps, but they don't cascade down mountain rocks. So it's kind of against the grain, pun intended there, because I mean, this is a swamp tree and it's very straight and it grows very tall. It's also another reason why this flat top style, I leave the trunk very tall and straight to show off the impressive trunk. Cascading, because of how dense this foliage can become, you can lose elements like the trunk and the line and everything in the tree. But you just bend it over. They're very, very flexible. If you want a cascade, go for it. If you're going to do a cascade with a cypress tree, my one recommendation is go all out. If you're going to make a cascade, don't just go a little bit, like go way down and make it fall over. But in reality, bald cypresses would never do that because they don't grow on mountains. Refer to John Naka's picture. You can look up John Naka's picture of the mountainside coming down to the valley, and then know that the bald cypress grows in the valley. And then you want to cut the top out of one. Okay, so that's going to result in immense back butting up and down the trunk, depending on how small the tree is. You could regrow that one pretty easily and change the direction of it really easy. So that's fine. And then put one in the ground, depending on your range, just like I was saying on the other video, depending on the range that you're in, I don't know how fast you'll get a trunk, something workable. So we have bald cypresses in the ground here at the nursery. We've got about 2,000 that we've been growing for about 5 to 6 years because they went in the ground a little bit before the nursery opened. Actually, no, that's a blatant lie. No, I got them mixed up with trident maples that we're growing. No, the bald cypresses were put in the ground 3 years ago, around the time we did this tree, and they are now the size of this tree. Mm-hmm. So in Louisiana, they do grow very fast because our growing season's like 11 months here in some cases. Sometimes it's a little bit less, but it depends on if the winter is comparable to like 30 degrees for like a week. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't even matter, you know. But yeah, for all the species that you see us work here, that's why we can work tropical trees pretty well, and they will grow like a weed. So good luck to you on those trees. But yeah, I see the experiment there is to try three different approaches. So of course, try all those approaches. They will work out for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, like I said, we're going to remove branches that are not necessary, and we're going to try to get back to that classical Von Banting-esque kind of style there. So Justin, I'll give you these branch cutters.
Want to cut all these things back now, or are you gonna do that? Like talk about more? Or are you just trying to
just leave the? I would probably leave the ones we'll probably wire. Okay, cool. Back a little bit so we can have some. Because I could play around with the length on them and maybe do something. So yeah, cut me down to like junctions like 2, down to 2 again. Me and Justin were going through and trimming this back and knocking off unnecessary growth, and I noticed something really weird happen right here, which is not out of the ordinary for these types of branches to develop. But there is a branch that was here. I cut it, and then when I cut it, it didn't fall off because it was connected right here and right here. So what happened is that the tree actually thread grafted or approach grafted itself. So this branch sat here for so long in between this junction of these two branches, and it swelled up because it grew so fast here, it grafted into this. So this is right here is this branch here. And you can see, I'll go ahead and cut it out all the way. That little branch there is now that branch. So if you guys are ever curious about what an approach graft looks like, and it should look like when it's successful, it should be bigger on the other side than where it started. So this was an accidental approach graft, but also kind of a happy accident because it put a branch in the spot where I
it's a good spot.
Yeah. But I don't know if I've ever cut a branch like that before, and it was just.
I'd say that was wild.
Like umbilical cord style stuck in it. Other side.
Oh, this is going way back, huh? But you're doing that later.
Yeah, I'm going to cut that back in later time. It's gotten some weird movement in it. Mm-hmm. And this is obviously the top, the apex of our tree. This here is too straight on that junction. We're going to have to recarve that top here, more than likely. So me and Justin have gone through and, that's what's going on. We've gone through and we removed a lot of branches that we really felt were not going to be good for the design to further the design of this flat top. And so I'm going to turn it around real quick so you guys can kind of see, if you guys want to see like a still, you can bring up a still really quick of what it was before, and then I'm going to turn it around. If I'm ever talking to the camera, it's because I have the person here shooting the footage. I'm assuming that she will know what I'm talking about. But another thing too I wanted to talk about real quick is I was wondering why, it's still white right there. This is the glue from the carve. So I did wood seal this. And I was going in, this is a really magical little tool. A lot of people don't think about this in bonsai. This is a mechanics pick. And I'm gonna go in, and what I do with this tool is I test. What they will not do because of this situation is if the wood is ever soft, see how I push the tool in there, it's like butter. It will not heal over that. So what I will probably have to do if I really want to heal this wound is go in and take all the punky wood out and go in with epoxy. What kind of epoxy I'm talking about is that wood sealers, the plumber's epoxy is what they call it. It comes in a tube, a round tube, and then it's 2-part, and you squish it, and it makes a big old giant tacky, whatever you want to use it for. And I would take all the punky wood out of here, and then I would replace all the punky wood. This is probably just gonna have to be hollow up here. So the question is do I want to go in and just hollow this out? Because I've got my shape of this now. Mm-hmm. I could just hollow this out and make it a feature of the tree. So I'll kind of think about that for a while. I don't think I have the the willingness and the time to go in and do that kind of procedure at the moment. But if I do come across a tree where I feel like it's a little bit more necessary, we can do a film, like maybe a shorter film of this later on, where you take the punky wood out, put the plumber's epoxy in there, but you also have to anchor the plumber's epoxy into the tree with a screw so that the tree doesn't push it out. So it's a process, but it's doable. So I'll address this later and kind of clean it out, and so you guys can see what that looks like after this, because I do have to also recarve this top part here and here as well. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and start getting some wire on this tree.
Okay.
And then one of the reasons why I did not cut a lot of these longer pieces back is because I don't know how much of it I need. Because in a lot of bald cypress styling, or just bonsai styling in general, I think this can be said about a lot of other trees, is that if you cut something back too far and you need to compress it to make it more interesting or to give movement or something, and you cut too much off, then you might be, like, I needed the branch to be this long, but I cut it back already, now it's like this long, and it just looks ridiculous. So we leave ourselves plenty of room to do foreshortening. And another thing that's going to be pretty important here for a lot of the people who have either worked on bald cypresses and have either seen demos or other instructional videos on how to work on cypresses. Usually when people wire them, they recommend that you take all of the leaves off. I like to actually kind of push against that and say do not fully defoliate your cypress, because there's a lot of different reasons for that. Is that I don't know where, like I said this earlier when I was answering questions about stuff about how to grow them and style them. I don't know where you're located. In Louisiana, that would be fine for us, but it would also result in like explosive back budding and growth, which is something I don't like, especially if I'm trying to refine and shape a tree like this. So because these are so energy positive, they're so strong of a species, I usually recommend that people don't do that. So I'll do what we'll just call as a partial defoliation. And I might even cut off some of the stuff on here, some of the branching, and we might see some branches that are bare, but that's totally fine. But I'm not going to make a point to completely remove all the leaves. So. So there's a comment to be made really quick about wiring a tree versus trimming and styling. So because of the way that my brain works, I don't know if there's other bonsai practitioners that do this, but like I told you, whenever we didn't want to cut these back,
ouch.
No, you're fine. We didn't want to cut these back because we weren't sure what length we're going to end up with after we spin them. So it's in reference to whenever we trim, we're doing refinement. So anytime that you trim a branch, you're taking it out of development, of growing and becoming larger, and you're cutting it back and you want it to back bud and become refined, which is making more smaller branches to make a more believable older branch structure on a tree. So I call that trimming refining. And then if we're wiring the tree and I'm not bending the branches like you guys are seeing, that's because we want to wire the whole tree so it's like a wire structure so that then we can style it. So wiring is not styling, trimming is not styling. Trimming is refinement, wiring is wiring, because wiring practice is really important. Do not make your wire funky because you won't be able to bend your branches. And then styling is literally whenever you try to style the tree. I say try, some people will attempt it and then find out that, they need to cut something off or cut back. So Because this process is not like we're never really done here. We're always doing different renditions. So a style, this is a true styling of a tree. Is taking it where it feels raw and then making it look like bonsai, like pre-bonsai at this point. So that's really where the styling part comes from. Fun fact, when you train in Japan, a lot of the wiring and cleanup happens whenever you're kneeling.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have personal experience, but all the professionals that have gone over there and learned, like I forgot the name of the position, of the sitting position, but you do literally everything in a kneeling position.
Interesting.
So you imagine how your knees feel.
Just like a tradition, like traditional, like that's just like what is tradition, or
Yep.
like interesting.
So me and Justin have gone through and put wire on just about the entire tree, except for this one spot where I wanted to address where it was cut originally. And so I'm going to carve it down with my Makita Dremel tool here and the Bonsai nibbler, just to smooth this out and to make this junction between these two branches make more sense. This wire is a little close, but I'm okay with it because if I nick it, it's aluminum, so it shouldn't be too bad. It'll actually, this tool is so sharp it'll eat through that aluminum. But if there was too much wire here, then I could run into the issue where I wouldn't be able to carve it the way I want. So make sure if you're wiring out the tree, if there's anything you see like this, address that and then move forward. Go ahead and just come out here and say it, guys. I striped that. So this is not going to hurt the tree because it's not in line with any major components except for here. But bald cypresses are really good at rechanneling from wounds. And this is only this is like skimming it right here. So you can still see the underbark, that reddish. It will make a weird scar right there, but I'm okay with it. But if anyone saw that, I'm not going to sit there and pretend like that didn't happen. It's another reason why we don't try to do stuff like crazy with power tools like this too often. I'm going to give it something a little bit more naturalistic feeling. And since it's so humid here in Louisiana, this is going to get soft and I'm just going to peel it away. It'll eventually probably fall out. But if I want to, I can do the epoxy thing later on. But just go something a little bit rough carve just to make it look natural for now. So I fixed the carving and we have all the branches wired out now, so I can officially style the tree now. And if I remember right, I predicted that my front was going to end up somewhere around in here, not directly off the front of this mortar tub, but more probably somewhere here. And the mortar tub is actually a pretty good size for this tree. It's been in here for quite some time now, so if I styled this tree originally 3 years ago on our first video this was worked on, that means the tree had already been in the pot for about a year or two, probably about a year. So it's about 4 years out of the ground, and it would be time to repot this and put it into its first bonsai container, whether that be an inexpensive Chinese ceramic or a plastic pot that resembles a bonsai container. So that will come in time, but I have to wait till springtime when it goes dormant and it's going to put on new leaves right before that time. So I'm going to go in and assume, I had to take a step back and look at it to see where my front is. Approximately right here. That's where the front is. So based off of that, I'm going to start kind of moving my branches around. So I like it whenever bald cypresses, especially old ones, they always try to regrow branches that they formerly lost. So I will always take and bend these lower branches really, really close to the trunk and contort them because they tend to be the little gnarly branches that try to survive the weathering and the age. So I will contort those pretty close to the trunk. I think I've said this in other videos where I will start up and then out. I usually like to do that because in Louisiana, our trees grow up and then outwards to become sun panels, as opposed to alpine styles where their branches go down first. There are arguments where this branch would come down, which I don't disagree with that because this is an older branch, so this one actually wouldn't be bad if it did come down a little bit, you think?
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't be too bad if this came down because at one point this branch, if it were to exist here, probably did support some lower branch system at one point, but because of the way the water is in Louisiana, the water comes up and down on older trees like this, and it will knock out the usefulness of lower sagging branches. And coastal erosion is also very true about some older trees that we see in Louisiana, where there were branches down here, but because of coastal erosion, the water levels are actually coming up. So there's a lot of the cypress trees we don't even actually get to see the bottoms of, unless we have an extreme drought like we did a couple of years back. So, but yeah, I like this branch kind of downward, in a downward orientation. And then, of course, like I said, in flat top nature, they're going to come back up. This will actually be a pretty decent little back kind of branch. Oop, you saw that kink? Kink that a little bit. All right, we'll cut that short and keep that like that. And so I'm trying to also build little flat top structures in this tree throughout as well. And so we're going to build like almost little flat top zones on the tree in different locations to reflect the rest of the design. Yeah, cut that off. And then our next branch to kind of look at here would be this one. I like them to kind of come up and out. You see me putting a lot of exaggerated movement into these because they are old branches, and so they will have had many opportunities to break off or for any reason to kind of change direction. Whereas with bonsai wire, we have the freedom to create all that directionality without having to rely on nature to do all that by itself. So in bonsai, do quick bonsai by wiring out and giving them all this movement. Let's see. Otherwise, if you want to do cut and grow style, which you can, it would take you an additional, probably another 20 years to get the movement that I just created with this wire. And I'm also making sure to not just like zigzag back and forth. I'm also trying to make sure that I go up and down, or I go in and out. So it's just not like uninteresting S curves throughout the tree. I'm gonna put this, breaking a branch doesn't mean that it's over. Breaking a branch will more than likely create character in the branch, as long as you hear it pop and then you stop. So
not like Pringles?
So not like Pringles. So if one pop and you can't stop. If you're on a bonsai branch, you're wiring out a bonsai, and you hear like a crack, don't keep bending because obviously that's going to keep going and it's going to break more. So you're going to want to stop and then just apply more movement past that angle, adding a lot of upward movement because flat top bald cypresses is a stacking formation. So they try to stack on top of each other to compete for, the tree's like competing for sunlight against itself in some ways. It's trying to find its new dominant crown as more and more storm damage blows its branches back and off. And I like to also build, like, just because we're doing flat top cypress and we're doing something a little naturalistic here, doesn't mean that we can't build pads that like line up as well. So I will line these pads up. I will take out leaves that are in between crotches and bends to kind of open it up so I can see what's going on. So that's not an issue at all. You can see now that I've got wire on everything, this process of styling this tree feels a lot quicker, more organic. I can just make decisions quicker and easier instead of having to like bend the branch a little bit, then go back and then put wire on another branch and say, does this look right? Well, this, you know, it's much easier just to wire the whole thing out. All right, so canopy. So one of the things I see a lot of people make a mistake on this part of the tree is this is supposed to, it still follows the same rules of bonsai. It feels a little counterintuitive to make the tree feel more sparse on the bottom and denser on the top, because usually in bonsai we have a big thick branch at the bottom as our first branch, and then the top is the crown. But in flat top cypress, this is going to be dense, and very dense up here because this is the very top of the tree, but we're showing off the sparseness, the natural tallness of this tree. So I have branches in here that are close together, and most people will clear those branches out. So like clear this branch out or this one or even this, but you'll never build that density if you knock all those branches out. So I keep as many little branches in here to build up how intricate the top of this tree should be. And another thing y'all probably notice is I'm an amazing like 5'9", and I'm working on a tree that's like well above my height. But also if we're doing a naturalistic style, let me turn this so the camera can see it a little bit better. If we're doing a naturalistic style, I want to feel like I'm under the tree, because that's really the whole key to bonsai, is feeling like you're under or far away from the tree. So it does help in some instances to work underneath, especially because flat top cypresses are trees in Louisiana that we rarely get to see the tops of. We're always passing by and just seeing them from a distance. Look at that lovely building of that pad right there. So every pad should have, when you build out a pad, you should have the layers. There shouldn't just be a fishbone branch where your branch is laid out like that, and then you have another branch that pops off of there like this. You should have, from that side profile, you should be able to see this in in traditional Japanese styles, you should be able to see the drop. And then one of the crooks where the branch is, you should see another pad form there. But if you don't do that and you just leave it open, then you'll see this long wispy branch with nothing above it. So it won't have that believability of building up of layers. So I love it whenever there is multiple layers to a flat top, and it doesn't have to be so sparse. Like, I know it is a sparse style, but it has to feel mature. It has to be dense in some way or shape or form. And yeah, something here we have to be very careful about. This tree is very tall, and I think the way that I approach it, this is a long piece that kind of complements the flat top. This will peak over it, but in reality, if this peaked too far, this branch would not exist. Oop, wrong tool. How about we put that branch cutter over here? So in reality, it would be that long. One of the biggest mistakes that I see with flat top building, whoa, that one blew off of there. It's still connected though. When I say it blew off of there, I tore the the shoulder off at the cambium because it was just too long to begin with. It'll survive. But yeah, people will make or other bonsai practitioners will make their flat tops really long and broad. They also don't do that in nature. They don't get that wide. I've seen them get very, very wide, but when it comes to proportions in bonsai, it just doesn't look very appealing for them to look like that. Oh, I love instructing and also making goofy noises. All right, so go in. So I'm making a huge, not a giant bin, but I'm making a decent bin with some pretty heavy gauge wire. I'm holding the the fulcrum, that's an appropriate word, of that branch, so that when I go to bend it, I don't rip that branch clean off that shoulder, because bald cypresses are also softwood trees. They're not like the densest wood that I've ever really like had, gone through and done bending on. So I put my thumb where I want to start the bend, and I bend over my hand because that tells me that I can do that without ripping that branch out of the fulcrum of the tree right there. So I don't risk, going too far. Look at that. Wire all that beautiful branch out just to cut it back to like only a few inches. And if I'm not seeming to get the bend, which I lost a little bit of my bend there when I was over explaining things, you can always go back and use the pliers, your wire pliers, to bend your branch. That's good. Remember to keep your ends of your wire nice and flat as well. Okay. So just like in any bonsai design, there needs to be direction. There needs to be flow to the tree. The tree's trunk direction, the line of the tree curves in, and then the top, this piece here, goes back that way. So all of my branches, all my weight and my directionality in the secondary and the tertiary branches need to point that direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through after I've laid out all this natural movement in the tree, I'm going to take out weight on this left side, bring it in, and make sure that it's all pointing in the appropriate direction for my flow. So we're causing a lot of tension and drama in this design by doing this. Okay. Well, that was a lot of fun. So
That was fun.
It's about 4 years of process out of the ground, regrowing the top. Now we've decided this is probably going to be a little bit more hollow. We've established basically the style. This is pre-bonsai now. This went from Yamadori, which is wild collected out of the swamps here. We also call it Numadori because it's swamp collected. And then it's been in a pot for a little while. We let it grow out and we carved it here. And then we wired it a few times in previous videos. Links will be in the description, I'm assuming. And then this is the third approach. So I feel like this is a pretty good pass because now I've compressed my crown and my flat top down to where it feels believable, like it's old. And also, one of the things that I had an issue with this tree for a long time is that it felt like it was way too tall. Now that I've compressed everything, it feels like everything's just like nice, and this is true in, like I was saying earlier, in every bonsai design, there should always be distance between the first branches and the second branches until you get towards the top and the distance gets shorter and shorter and shorter until we're at the top where it's so dense that you can almost barely tell the difference between where branches emerge. And that's really starting to happen here. And bald cypresses, they grow so fast and they fill in so quickly that achieving more refinement will be very easy on this tree. Next year, this tree it'll look like a flat top, and we'll be able to put it into a good bonsai pot, something probably a little deeper but longer because it's so tall. Like a big oval would be nice. So hopefully we'll remember to get our filming crew in here to catch that repot so you guys can see that transition, and we can have like a full, like an actual thing where it's like
this tree will
raw
all through, yeah,
to here. That would be really cool. But yeah, I'm really happy with this transition. I'm happy with this branch. I'm just happy with the tree. It looks good. So as I said before, my name's Evan Pardue. I'm with Underhill Bonsai.
I am.
This was the continuation of styling a flat top style bald cypress. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you watched to the end here, thank you so much. It helps the algorithm, of course, when you watch the videos all the way through. I also want you guys to subscribe to our channel. We'll be producing and releasing more content like this. Hopefully we can have something out every month for you guys, something new and fresh. And please put questions in the comments. I will go back and do my best to get through those comments and answer as many as I can, live record it, as opposed to going down in the comments. I can try to do that, but I love answering them and recording as well. Also, go over to Little Things for Bonsai People on Spotify or whatever other listening platform you listen to your podcast shows on, and follow and listen to me and Carmen Leskovinsky and Mike Lane there for even more bonsai content. Thank you guys, and y'all see y'all in the next one.